And we are here on LinkedIn for our usual Thursday LinkedIn live session. And today we're talking about HR strategy. This is the time of year when a lot of leaders sit down and create their HR strategy for the new year. In this case, 2023. Unbelievable, but it's here, it's on top of us. And so we're going to be talking about how to put together that HR strategy. And I'll be answering your questions. If you leave your questions in the chat here, I will answer your questions about creating your 2023 HR strategy. My background is HR leadership, and I always love talking to folks about their HR strategy, how to put that together, and how to build a strategy that is really going to inform and empower your actions in the new year rather than just being a piece of paper that gets written and then gets put in a drawer and forgotten, which unfortunately is what has happened to a lot of strategies and a lot of HR strategies in the past. So we're going to avoid that, and we're going to write a strategy that really has value for you and your teammates and the organization overall. Okay. So let's talk about, first of all, what is a strategy? The word strategy is used in a lot of different contexts in life and in the working world. So it's hard to know what would my strategy look like and what would it include. I remember when my kids, one after the other, came home from school in first or second grade and said, well, we learned some strategies today, strategies for dealing with conflict with another child, or strategies for dealing with maybe our nerves or anxiety at school. And of course, I think all of that is great. I'm a big fan of teaching kids about themselves and about other people in the world in school. But my brain said, okay, that is fabulous. And I wonder if the kids are going to be confused about the meaning of the word strategy as time goes on, because in the working world, part of the grown up world, we tend to think a strategy as a higher level goal or activity or initiative, and then as tactics to be the things that you do in the moment. Like, for example, a tactic would be we're going to send out an email blast to all of our employees to let them know about open enrollment in November, for example. Open enrollment when they choose a new health plan or stick with their existing health plan. That's a tactic. And that tactic, sending out the blast email, supports the larger strategy of having as close to 100% participation in the open enrollment process as we can get, which might be a strategy. But your HR strategy might be loftier than 100% enrollment in the open enrollment. That itself might be considered a tactic in support of a higher goal, right? Oh, are you confused? Put your questions in the chat, and I will answer as many questions as I can. Strategy has a lot of definitions, but I love the definition from my ex-boss, John Z. He used to say, strategy is the way out of the woods. It's the way out of the woods, coming from the perspective that we are always in some kind of woods, right? For example, at work, there's always some issue or obstacle that we need to surmount. And they're big. They're big obstacles. It's not a small thing, right? Like, I need to get some more pens from the office supply department, right? They're big obstacles. We're not being as effective as we need to be in recruiting, or we're not being as effective as we need to be in the marketplace, and our previous customers have left us and they're buying from someone else. These are the big strategic issues and obstacles that business people, leaders of organizations confront and need to surmount. So, this definition from my old boss, John, that a strategy is the way out of the woods, that really crystallizes a strategy is what gets you where you need and want to go. It's not a set of tasks. Unless we really see and can easily perceive the way those tasks come together and coalesce to create a strategy that is going to get us out of the woods and to the place we're trying to go. Can you talk about organization development and change management strategies? Yeah, why not? Can touch on that. Okay. Anything else in the questions related to? Can you talk about talent acquisition strategies? Yes, I can, of course. Talent acquisition, TA. Okay. So strategy is going to be the topmost momentum, area of focus. It's the goal for the HR team and the HR energy that the HR folks create and instill and spread and disseminate throughout the organization. It's going to be our big goal, our big push for the year 2023. And where does that strategy come from? Well, it comes from two places. Number one, the strategy of the organization overall. In other words, an HR strategy created in a vacuum without respect to the organization's goals would not be appropriate. It wouldn't make any sense really. The organization is trying to do XYZ next year, so the HR strategy will naturally proceed from those organizational goals and priorities. The other place your HR strategy comes from is your mission as an HR team, comes from your mission as an HR team. And this leads to this burning question: what is our mission? As an HR group, what is our mission in this organization? I was very lucky when I got into HR as a young person because my boss, the VP of operations, told me what he wanted my mission to be. I wasn't going to argue. It sounded like a great mission. And actually, for me, the mission that my boss, John, a different John, gave me when I got into HR 45,000 years ago is a pretty good mission for HR people all the time, in my opinion. He said you have two things to do as HR manager, Liz. One, hire great people, meaning take away impediments or obstacles that are keeping our company from hiring great people right now. Hire great people, meaning get rid of the roadblocks that are keeping us from getting great people onto our payroll right now. And the second part of your HR mission is to make this place an amazing place to work. Hire great people and make this place an amazing place to work. Why? Why is that important? To make the company a fantastic place to work. Well, it's a great idea because it makes it easier to recruit. When it's a great place to work, the company reputation spreads, doesn't it? And of course, the other reason to make it a great place to work is that the company then will be more effective. It will be more innovative. It will be more collaborative. It will be more profitable. The work will be more fun and everything will get better by every metric, human and financial and operational, when it's a great place to work. So that's your mission. I'm putting you in this job as HR manager. You have a mission. It has two parts: hire great people and make this place an amazing place to work. That's a pretty good mission for all HR leaders everywhere, in my opinion, because it really gets at why we exist as a function. Why else, right? Why else have an HR department? Hire great people and make this place an amazing place to work, right? So, when we think about what might get in the way of pursuing that mission, what are some of the things that slow us down and keep us from always refining our recruiting and talent acquisition processes and messaging and mindset? What are some of the things that distract us from our path? And what are the things that distract us, right, or take us away from making the place an amazing place to work? Well, politics, right? Confusion about whose job it is to do X, Y, or Z. And guess what? That rolls back on us because that's an HR issue. That someone mentioned here, organizational development. That's an organizational development challenge, isn't it? Politics. Politics spring from fear. If there's a lot of politics in your organization, a lot of CYA, which means cover your backside and say, I sent you the form. Didn't you see it? I'll send it again. It wasn't my fault. That's not a good use of your time. That means there's too much fear in the environment. So if you're an HR person or an organizational development person, this is a very big issue to address. Might feel soft and squishy to address the level of politics, which means the level of fear in the organization, but it's critical because nothing else that you might do or spend time on matters unless you deal with that root cause issue. Why are people so freaked out? Why are they afraid to make a mistake? And that's going to require you to have some really real and human conversations with some of your top leaders, starting with your own manager. This is the central issue I see in trying to pursue my mission as an HR leader here to hire great people and make this place an amazing place to work is the level of fear. How can we address that? Right away, let's get to the elephant in the room, if indeed that elephant is in your room. With luck, it's not, but it very well may be. Okay, have you done or will you do a course on how to create a proper employment contract for contractors in the USA? This would get around the at will. Yeah, we actually have that. That's in our course, Take Charge Consulting, which is our consulting course. Okay, so if we start with this mission for HR, which is make it a great place to work plus hire great people, that pretty much captures everything. There might be a big new piece of employment related legislation coming down the pike that you have to deal with. And you have to create a policy and procedures and train people in how to follow this new legislation or new rule coming down from your city or your state or your county or your country overall. That's pretty strategic because not only because if you don't respond correctly to a new piece of legislation, your company's going to get in trouble and pay fines, but also because that legislation is part of this issue, hiring great people and making it a great place to work. New legislation regarding employment, labor laws are intended to improve the environment, right? So, part of what you're doing when new legislation comes along and you need to build an infrastructure around that in terms of communication, messaging, policies, procedures, and training is to get buy in. This is how we're going to ensure pay equity, or this is how we're going to reduce the incidence of age discrimination or racial bias or whatever it might be. Is that you're selling an idea. You're trying to get buy-in from the managers and executives and possibly employees in your organization. So I hope that you see that even this project of creating an HR strategy requires a lot of self reflection and exploration and selling. We in HR are always selling something, selling an idea, selling ourselves as agents of change in an organization, selling our fellow managers on shifting their viewpoints, which can be really hard for a lot of people. If you see my poll that I posted earlier this morning on LinkedIn asking whether salaried employees should get comp time when they work overtime, well, the opinions are flying on both sides of that debate. And so this is what happens inside organizations. And HR people have to wade into these controversies very often and help come to some kind of consensus because we all have to work together, right? I learned pretty early on as an HR leader that I couldn't just say, this is what we're going to do, and the conversation is closed. I could say that I had the authority, but how does that help? Right? If there's no buy in, then you're going to get grudging compliance from your fellow managers. That's not great. The same way that we tell managers you can't lay down the law and just refuse to debate it, refuse conversation, because then employees feel like they're not heard. Same thing. You'll get grudging compliance, but you won't get buy in. And then who wins? Did you win because you had the power to enforce a rule or a policy that you happen to like, but your employees don't? That's not a win. That's when people become disengaged and then they quit. So this stuff is pretty complex. But if you proceed from the idea that my job is to make it an amazing place to work and to hire great people, then your HR strategy creation process becomes a lot easier. Our job in HR is not to enforce laws. That's a small part of it, but with luck, if we're doing the right things, then the laws will get followed. These HR laws are not complicated for the most part. We have to pay people correctly. We have to avoid any kind of bias or discrimination, right? We have to be fair with people. We have to be respectful of them. You're going to adhere to the laws, right? We have laws in every area of business, finance, so many laws about how we have to treat customers and how we have to treat money, the company's own money, its bank accounts and its investments. But you don't hear CFOs coming to meetings and saying, I really got to figure out how to obey these laws and comply with these laws. That's what they do for breakfast, right? That's table stakes, as they say. That is not their strategy. They have to deal with that in order to go ahead and build the financial resources and opportunities of the organization, which is their real job. So I would love to shake every HR person out of the mindset that their job has a lot to do with employment laws. It doesn't. That is the basic bottom line, to create systems that will make sure you're complying with all the relevant employment laws, and then you forget about it. And your job is to build an incredible culture and to cultivate and develop leaders, right? And to hire amazing people and take away impediments that would keep you from getting fantastic people on board. So let's talk about that. We had a comment about talent acquisition, maybe one of my favorite, undoubtedly one of my favorite topics. I love recruiting and I love talking about recruiting. You know why? Because recruiting is an opportunity to sell the idea of working for you. And that's really what it needs to be. It's not a process of vetting and weeding out unsuitable candidates. That's a complete waste of time. Think about think about a product development team in your company, and they are developing a radio. You're selling radios, because it's 1962, and they have developed a radio. And they need parts, they need raw materials to go to production and be built into these radios. And so they say to your purchasing manager, hey, can you go find us a transistor and some wires and a housing for this radio and whatever we need? And the purchasing manager says, yeah, absolutely. I will find you all the suppliers you need, and we will execute the contracts so that these raw materials are ready for the production line and there's no holdup. Great, brilliant. Now, what would you say if that purchasing manager said, you know what I'm going to do as I look for these raw materials, the 15 parts that we need to construct these radios? I'm going to put out a worldwide call for suppliers to apply, and then I'm going to spend weeks weeding them out and getting rid of the unsuitable ones. You would say, don't do that. That's idiotic. Why would you do that? Do your research and talk to the 3 suppliers or 4 suppliers in each category who are the most likely fit. Why would you entice a bunch of people to participate in a process where 95% of them are going to be weeded out? That's a terrible idea. That's not a business process. That doesn't help our company succeed. All that does is make us enemies. Why would you do that? That makes no sense. But that's what we do in recruiting. That's what we do all the time. Come one, come all, and apply for a job, but you're probably not qualified for it, and you're going to get a no thank you message if you even get any communication from us at all. trashing our own employer brand for no good purpose at all. None. That's nuts. If you're working, for example, with recruiters, vendors, outside recruiting firms, right? Recruiting agencies, you're going to want to cultivate such a close relationship with them that when they send you resumes, you're going to interview the people because you already trust the recruiter you're working with. That's the goal. Not no, 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 thank you, no, 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 maybe yes. You want to around the bell curve, right, of suitable candidates, you want to get that thing so tight that when you have a trusted recruiting partner, a vendor that you work with, and they send you a resume, it's an automatic yes because you have developed the trust with them. They don't send you unsuitable candidates, right? And if your hiring managers are saying, no, I know we really like XYZ recruiting firm, and we especially like this particular recruiter who works there, they really get us, and they've actually placed 3 or 4 people in this department here in our company in the last 6 months, but I don't want to interview this candidate of theirs. And you, as the HR person in the middle of that, say, no, no, we should interview the candidate. We trust this recruiter's judgment. Let's just interview the candidate. It takes an hour. No, I don't want to interview that candidate. Okay, well, if you don't want to interview the candidate and you want to go back to our number one recruiter who makes their money by placing people with us, then we have to have a good reason. And this is you in HR, in talent acquisition, finding your voice and saying, I'm not going to say to the recruiter, this recruiter, or any recruiter ever, we don't like the candidate, but I can't tell you why. It doesn't even make sense. It makes no sense. I can't tell you why. Why not? Gut feel. Gut feel? Gut feel about a resume? What do you not like about the resume? We're going to hold our hiring managers' feet to the fire. We love them and we partner with them, but that doesn't mean they get to be capricious, right? That doesn't mean they get to be ruled by whatever. I don't want to interview the candidate. Well, we need to interview the candidate, or we need to have a good reason why not, actionable, so that our beautiful recruiter who is out there beating the bushes on our behalf, unpaid, by the way, until they make a placement, right? So that they feel like, well, what am I looking for? If you didn't like this candidate who looks to me like a perfect match for what you put in your spec, then I need to know what they're missing. And when you do that, very often the hiring manager will say, okay, I'll interview the candidate because there was no reason. Now, why would a hiring manager who needs help refuse to interview a candidate for no reason when they actually need help? Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Emotion at work is a big topic we should talk about more often than we do. Emotion. They were in a bad mood. They just came out of a meeting. I don't want to interview this person. Does that sound like a 4-year-old? It's okay. We all turn into 4-year-olds at times, and I don't want to impugn 4-year-olds. They're like the greatest people in the world, right? They're so sweet and adorable, and they speak from their heart. So I just want to acknowledge we all get there at times. We all fall into our emotions at times and get irrational. But part of our job as HR leaders is to say, I know you had a tough afternoon. Why don't you sit with that resume, look at it again? I won't get back to the recruiter till tomorrow morning. I suggest you interview the candidate. You might be surprised. We've had great success with this recruiter. And it would just make no sense to say we're not interviewing the candidate. And we also can't tell. Why would they ever send us another resume if we did that to them, right? So we're lifting up the entire organization, starting with ourselves, starting with our own self knowledge, our professional and personal development. But back to the HR strategy. So, your HR strategy is going to proceed from your mission, which is to make it a fantastic place to work and to hire great people. And then the other piece, if you had that as your only guidance in creating your strategy, then your strategy would be, those activities devoted to making it a great place to work and hiring great people. And those are wonderful activities, but we need another piece of input into your HR strategy, and that is, what is the organization trying to do? What is the organization's strategy for 2023? Because it changes year to year. Are you in a rapid growth phase? Are you downsizing and constricting? And how would that affect your HR strategy, right? Are you acquiring other organizations? Are you partnering? Are you doing joint ventures? You need to talk to the business leaders, whether that's a division VP, certainly your own manager, all the way up the line as far as you can go. If you are responsible for creating the HR strategy, you need to understand what the business is trying to do next year. And one of the things I've learned by doing this is that sometimes the business leaders undoubtedly have discussed their plans for the next year, but haven't written them down. And you may be in the position of actually being the person who articulates for the first and only time the company strategy or the business unit or the region strategy for next year. And then coming up with the HR strategy to support that business strategy is very easy. Is this making sense? Let me see if we have questions. Comment. The media, by and large, reinforces the archetype of the Steve Jobs type of manager, the Silicon Valley overlord who is the physical embodiment of the company, despite his or her nasty character. Yeah, well, leaving character out of it, I agree 100% that not just the media, but a lot of us buy into this notion that whatever the CEO wants to do on a Thursday or a random Monday, that's the strategy. But part of our job in HR is to bring that view that it is important to write down the strategy and to share it with a number of people. You might end up in your quest to create an HR strategy, you may end up being the focal point and the instigator, if you will, or the evangelist for having a written strategy and getting the management team together to discuss it and to get buy-in. That's a wonderful meeting to have this time of year or in October or November every single year to talk about the next year's strategy. It's also, it revs people up and it gets them excited and it makes them feel like part of something bigger than just their daily and their weekly metrics. We never want to forget that part of our job in HR is to be the cheerleaders and spread the pixie dust around. That's not just the things that many people see as trivial, like birthday celebrations or picnics or whatever. It's also a really fundamental thing about helping people understand what the company is trying to do and their part in it, right? Otherwise, the job is just about getting a paycheck, and that's horrible. That isn't an amazing place to work. We're trying to make our organization an amazing, amazing place to work. And part of that requires buy in. And so the question becomes, what am I helping people get buy in to? And part of it is the strategy. So we got folks from all over. Talked about that. Talent acquisition strategies. We talked about talent acquisition in terms of relationships with the agency recruiters we support. I suggest that you have a small number of agency recruiters and recruiting firms that you work with, and then you really partner with them. No arm's length, I won't return your calls, or it's a one-way transmission of resumes in here and no information comes back. That's 1950s stuff. My experience is you have recruiting partners that you work with. They are your brothers and sisters. You are on the phone with them. You are texting with them because they are the conduit to the talent marketplace out there, outside your company walls. And the candidates that the thing about recruiters is, I think I'm a pretty good salesperson, but I cannot sell our opportunities to candidates as well as a recruiter can. Why? Because I work for the company, right? Candidates expect me to say things that sound like I'm selling them on the job, right? The recruiter is way more neutral. They'll say, look, you have three companies that you're interviewing with, and here's one of them. Here's what they have to offer, but I want you to make the right decision for you. That's what every good and ethical recruiter says to candidates, as though, well, they should, right? So they are huge, huge, huge part of most organizations' recruiting strategy. But there are other parts. Your job ads, big part of your recruiting strategy. And frankly, most job ads are horrendous. They talk about what you need to have to work for us. That's secondary. You're selling. You're selling. Remember, hire great people. It's not our company has an immediate opening. Come on, no one believes that. It's still going to be 6 weeks or 8 weeks before you make. You can't say that. Immediate to you does not mean immediate to someone who might not be working and needs to pay the rent next month, or they are working and they're desperate to get out of their job. Speed in the recruiting process is a huge part of your recruiting strategy. I would get out a whiteboard. Don't get out a whiteboard, it's already on the wall, I hope. I would diagram your recruiting process and look at the bottlenecks, because you're going to lose candidates if it's too slow, or if there are periods where the communication drops out. Somebody interviewed for a job last Thursday, now it's Wednesday and you haven't gotten back to them, they're gone. Why would they wait? They won't wait. Talent market is like this right now. They'll be gone. You will not get them. It's insulting. They took the time for free, unpaid, to meet with you. You got to get back to them. 48 hours is plenty. Even if the answer is we have a few more interviews we still need to do, but everyone thought you were a very strong candidate. Hey, I appreciate that. It's better than nothing. It's better than silence, right? So that's a really big part. Your recruiting process and the communication inside of it along the way at those points when you communicate with candidates or have an opportunity to communicate with candidates, that is everything. And by the way, if you want to have impact on your organization's bottom line, the money, there is no better place to have that impact than in the recruiting process. Remember my first boss as an HR person, John Brady, shout out to him. He said, you have two things to do: make it a great place to work and hire great people. And those two things reinforce each other. It became very, very obvious that the way we recruit and the way we talk to candidates and the way we interact with candidates and the humanity at every stage of that and the speed and the care for their time and their energy and their needs was everything. And it became a competitive advantage for our company in not just the talent marketplace, but the marketplace overall. Because if people want to work for your company and the reputation precedes you, it's a great place to work, recruiting becomes easy, trivial. I went from that company to another company. And I said, my way of doing HR is to make it a great place to work and hire great people. And they said, that works for us. And that's what we did again, right? So you're taking away obstacles and impediments that make recruiting slower or less effective, and you're taking away obstacles and roadblocks that make it not as good a place to work as it could and should be, right? Hey, Janet from San Antonio. Okay, what else? Questions? If you have a question about HR strategy, leave it in the comments, please. Oh, organization development and change management. Look at, we talk about change management, folks, and we talk about it with respect to our employees. We're doing a change management initiative around a big software implementation or a reorganization or what have you. I would like to see a focus from my change management friends and siblings on leadership change management, because in my experience, and we have to tell the truth about this stuff, the people who need to change their mindset the most are the senior leaders. The people who need to change their mindset the most to benefit their organizations are the senior leaders. So being a change management professional, much less a manager, director, or VP, means finding it in yourself, finding the intestinal fortitude to tell the truth to leaders when they themselves are the impediments to change. And here's the thing, they always are. How can I be so sure about that? The way that I know that is that if the leaders were not impediments to change, then the change would happen anyway. It would already have happened. We have to be honest about that. Leaders themselves need to shift their mindset. You cannot force people to change, right? They can quit, they can resist, They can do that grudging compliance thing and really gum up the works. You want buy-in from your employees. I wish it were not called change management because that sounds like something you can just install. We're just going to install this change management. What kinds of changes are people excited about? Ones that they have buy-in to, ones that will benefit them, ones that they feel a part of. So if they don't feel a part of these changes, it's because the senior leadership has not invited them into the conversation, invited them into the win, right? If we're honest about change management, look at what your CEO is getting paid and the fact that if you're a public company, it's public information, and look at where employees are getting paid. Look at layoffs. Look who gets laid off. How come it's never just VPs who get laid off, right? It's rank and file employees. We're in a time where brutal, compassionate honesty is called for. It's essential. So I can't talk about change management processes or organizational development processes without talking about the reality that ordinarily, in my experience, the people who most need to change their views are the people that it's hardest to have impact with and have leverage with, and that's the senior managers. And the reason we have a hard time telling them the truth is because they could let us go or take away our power if we don't tell them what they want to hear. And I'm sorry if that sounds harsh. That's just the truth. So being an organizational development person or a change management person is hard because if you just carry out orders, then you're not anything. You're just a hench person. That's not exciting. That's not your mission, right? Your mission is to actually affect change. And the way that you do that is by having influence on senior leaders. Makes you really into a kind of executive coach, which is a great thing for every organizational development person to be, every change management professional, and every HR leader to be an executive coach. Speaking the truth out of your mouth, even when you're feeling like, ugh. I would say that I put my job at risk, like clearly put my job at risk by speaking a lot of truth when it was scary and my heart was pounding probably a half dozen times in 20 years or so. And I just said, you know what? If they're not going to fire me, but if they do, I'll get on my feet. What am I going to do? Take a paycheck and have this role and not be myself and not be effective and not help these employees or help the company? I said I would help the company be a great place to work. And so today on the docket, the way to do that is by telling my boss something I know he doesn't want to hear. Well, too bad for me. I got to do it. We have to get there because that's personal empowerment. We can't say, well, I better keep my mouth shut. CEO wouldn't like that. Is that you? Is that your purpose on earth? Is that why you got into change management to avoid doing scary things? Sometimes we have to speak the harsh truths to CEOs and executives, and that's part of the job, right? Some people become consultants because they feel that they can speak more freely as a consultant than they could as a salaried change management or organizational development or human resources person or even as a talent acquisition person. They have more leverage on the outside. They're more listened to. Why is that? Because they're not on the payroll. They're not like off with their head. They're, right? And all of a sudden they're listened to. I noticed that when I started consulting. It was like, wow, people are just listening to me. Not like I wasn't listened to before when I was on the payroll, but as a consultant, they're like writing down what I'm saying. Like every word is golden. Cool, right? Let's talk about how to implement what I am suggesting. Or let's talk about if you don't agree. Let's talk about what's in the breach. Let's see what other questions we've got. Employee engagement. Oh, yes. And we're going to finish with that because we're doing a little short session today. Employee engagement. Thank you for asking about that, Mesbah. Employee engagement is everything, right? As well as candidate engagement, candidate experience, and employee experience. These are the topics that make your company a great place to work. Nobody else gets to evaluate whether it's a great place to work except the employees. In that respect, they rule. In that respect, they are your boss. They are your boss. Our job as HR folks is to be listening all the time and be asking, what else do you need? How are you doing? How's the job? What can I do for you? What do you need to know? How can I help you? Sometimes HR people resist this and they say, I'm not a service person. Well, we all are. We all are, right? Everyone on this earth, right? we're in service to everyone around us. And when you're in HR, what the employees think is very, very important. It's more important than what the CEO thinks, because the CEO is only one person. They can't replace 200, 2,000, 20,000 employees, right? In this case, the CEO has to take a back seat to what the team members think, because they are actually the ones who do the work that power the company. And this might be one of the truths that you need to find the words to say to your CEO when they get fearful. Remember, I talked about the manager who turned into a 4-year-old? CEOs can do it. They do it all the time because it's hard to be a CEO. It's lonely, and they don't have anybody sometimes they feel really comfortable with, that they can talk through issues with. So if I hear a CEO say, "Well, I'm mad at these employees," I give them a lot, and I say, "I understand you feel put upon and you feel unappreciated, and we all feel that way at times. There's nothing wrong with those feelings, and I'm happy to talk to you about that. And where I can be useful to you is creating that separation between this is how I feel, and then this is the memo I'm going to send out in my anger," right? You've seen these angry CEO memos, and it's like, "Oh, this is not good. It's not good for the culture," right? Don't hate the employees. They're the ones who run the business, right? How to combat negative Glassdoor reviews? Wow, what a great question. Negative Glassdoor reviews are hurting your employer brand, obviously, right? And the thing to do is not to command a bunch of employees to write positive Glassdoor reviews. Unfortunately, that happens. And I think Glassdoor tries really hard to keep fake positive reviews from, as well as fake negative reviews, from showing up on the site. But if there is a negative Glassdoor review on your company, the thing to do is to get ahead of that issue. What happened? Don't blame the person who left the review. "Oh, I was just a disgruntled employee." That's so lame, right? That's like you dated someone and somebody says, "Yeah, that person you dated is really trashing you on Facebook." You say, "Well, they were a jerk." Well, then why'd you date them, right? You hired that employee who left that review, so you can't now blame the employee like they pretended to be someone they're not. Well, what about your fancy schmancy interviewing process that's supposed to learn all the important things about people before you hire them? So you have to be more honest than that. You have to be more open and more vulnerable than that and say, "You know what? I saw that negative Glassdoor review and I feel bad about it. I don't know all the details. I know that manager is no longer in the company and we've done on a reorg. And I think maybe that job description was not amazing and it wasn't up to the standard of what a job description should be." So that's 2 years ago. I hope we've really all matured since then and evolved. But I would love to talk to you about any concerns that you have about this role that you and I are discussing, because my goal is to be 100% transparent with you about what's great and what's not great in the company and what we're working on. See, here's the thing. We think we have to put up this like barrier, like our company's great and you'll be lucky if you get in here. But that's not appealing to candidates. First of all, nobody wants to feel like I'm just a cog in a machine, but you want to tell them what's not working. Like, you know what? Here's the thing. This is called an e-commerce configuration manager, and what it is our e-commerce site is new. We're selling these big expensive complicated pieces of equipment for the first time online. So it means when we get an order, we have the order, that's great, but somebody needs to get in touch with that buyer, that customer, and really understand what they need in terms of customization and configuration, and then just stay close to them until the thing is shipped, until it's delivered, and until it's installed. So this is a piece of our business that we're building out. And I thought from your background that you this might be a meaty assignment that you could really sink your teeth into. That's what people want to hear. Not, "Do you have C++ skills? Do you have this? Do you have that?" It's not a piece of meat that you're evaluating, right? It's a person with needs and thoughts and ideas and creativity and enthusiasm that you're inviting to join your team. If there's resonance, we have to be willing to show our imperfect side as a company or as a person. And we have to be willing to sell candidates on our opportunities. We're not vetting in an interview, or if we are, it's embedded in the sales process. I'm going to say one thing because I have to go. Every good sales process has a piece of the overall system called qualifying. We qualify customers. Most products are not appropriate for every single human being on earth, right? So we qualify the customer, and that might be construed as vetting. We say, so are you looking for this kind of window for your new house or this kind? Okay. So what were you looking to spend? You're qualifying them, but they don't feel offended. They don't feel affronted because you're trying to help them decide whether your windows are the right ones for their new house or not. We have to do the same thing in recruiting. We have to qualify candidates, but we're still selling. We're always selling, always selling. And we're always selling our employees on staying with the company because they have other opportunities as well. So, HR strategy, bring it back to our overall topic today, make the company a great place to work, hire great people. That means taking away impediments and obstacles that keep those two critical things from happening right now. Questions about HR strategy, message me on LinkedIn or reach me at support@humanworkplace.com. That's our email address. You are awesome. Here's to you. Here's to you next year and all the time. I'm so glad you were able to join us today, and I'll see you next time.